Good afternoon. Welcome to the Expert Talks and to this afternoon's focus topic, where we are going to be looking at the role of EPR and legislation in textile-to-textile recycling. And to talk about this, we have invited three experts from the field. We have Carla Guccia from Retraced. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
And Cécile Martin from Refashion. And last but not least, Jennifer Wallace from Sympatex. Wherever you like.
Thank you.
Okay. So we've been talking about textile-to-textile recycling for a while in this industry, 10, 15 years now. It's a really important subject. We're seeing the importance of that right now with the political situation. Oil is not coming through. And so in the future, we could be stuck, which is a good or a bad thing, with the feedstock that we have. But everybody right now seems to be in a waiting position. And so the discussion today is really, is there a role for legislation in here? How can EPR help us? And what systems do we have to manage all these legislations that are swinging backwards and forwards with the omnibus at the EU level? And one day it's we're keeping this, and the week after it's no, we're going back. And that makes it difficult to keep track. So I'd like to approach all of this with you. And specifically before we start, maybe each one of you could introduce yourself, your role in the company, and tell us a bit more about what you do. Jennifer?
Okay. Is this working? Yes, it is. Okay. Hello, and thanks for having me. My name is Jennifer Wallace, and I work for Sympatex. We are a Munich-based ingredient brand, and our vision is that we want to close the loop together. And we are committing to this by producing laminates that are mainly, or most of them are produced out of monomaterial. We try to put as much as recycled content into the laminates, and obviously not using any form of high concerning substances like PFAS, for example. And so in my part within Sympatex is I'm in the CSR department in business transformation, and I'm overlooking mostly the social part, but also public affairs and policy making, and also trying to push the digitalization within our company. And so this is where our partner Retrace is coming into the picture. And I bring like 20 years of experience within the textile industry, so never done anything else before, and have a strong focus in product development within the circular and sustainable product development. So that's me.
Thank you. Lots of experience. It's interesting to hear product development and the same pitch as social and environmental.
Yeah, everything goes hand in hand. We can't do one thing without having an impact on something else. So I think we have to think everything holistically. So if I produce something, I have to not just think about the material or the production that we're using. Are we doing also about the people involved within the supply chain? And especially here in the global north, we make decisions that affects immediately people down the supply chain, especially women, especially people in the global south. So I think this is nothing we have to think separately. So if you are involved in product development or anything else in the textile industry, you always have to think about the social impact. And so for me, it's a natural development to come from product development and now being responsible within the social department.
That's very thoughtful. It'd be great to see that extended a bit more. Carla, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and your role within Retraced?
Yes, of course. I mean, Jennifer already gave me a great hook to start with. So I'm Carla, working at Retrace, and we're actually a company for sustainability and compliance management, only focusing on the fashion and textile industry. So we are the experts when it comes to that segment. And I personally work with brands such as Sympatex, to help them in getting their vision when it comes to sustainability and compliance into a practical solution. So building a concept with them, working out a scope for them, how they can use Retrace complementary to any other system they might already have or to their individual setup, but how they can work with us on their sustainability, such as maybe like traceability or even risk management in Retraced. So we enable them to do things less manual, but more as a practical online solution.
So enabler.
We are an enabler. I mean, we don't like to call ourselves system or platform. That sounds so boring. But also it's not really what we are at the end of the day platform, but we also see ourselves as ecosystem partner because we are people behind. We work quite very close with each other. We're not just a system where you log in. There are always people involved. There's also an ecosystem behind. So for example, we're working also with many other partners out there, such as, for example, RPEC, when it comes to DPP. So it's not just a system, it's a lot more.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cécile?
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm Cécile Martin and I'm Innovation and Recycling Manager for Refashion. So Refashion being the French PRO for textiles and footwear. So all fashion products, no workwear products. Yes, so basically we're in charge of the post-consumer waste from French citizens or any products that are bought in France. So to support the sorting system, to find some reuse options, also repair with French citizens. And I'm dealing more with the recycling part. So once, you can no longer wear your clothes or shoes, to find some solutions for all the waste that cannot be reused.
Thank you. So we're already jumping ahead. We're talking about EPR and PRO. Can we define those terms for the people that aren't using these every day?
Yes. So EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility. It's based on the principle that the polluter pays. So that means brands and retailers putting products on the market, for example, in France or anywhere in Europe, they will need to pay a fee. So in France, actually, EPR is mandatory. So brands and retailers have to comply with the French law and pay a small fee on each textile or footwear product they sell in France. And we are the PRO dealing with that, so the Producer Responsibility Organization. So we are a private company, non-profit, but we are accredited by the French government for a period. Now it's a period of 6 years until the end of 2028.
Thank you. And maybe you could tell us more about how the EPR system works in between the fees and the eco-modulation, or the subsidies or bonuses that brands can get and the fees that they should pay. Do we want to put up your slides with your numbers? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Can we switch monitors, please? Daniel, Chris?
I can see them talking. So.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Yes, that's the one.
This one. Thank you.
Well, the first one I just covered it. So we are basically the first. We were the first EPR system in Europe and the world, actually, and we've been the PRO since the beginning. EPR was implemented in France, so since 2008. The law was end of 2007. And you can see we work with the whole ecosystem, including French citizens, because obviously they are part of the value chain.
How does that work? How do the French citizens interact with you?
Well, basically, we run some consumer campaigns for responsible disposal of clothing after they wear it. We also engage them on repair. So we launched the repair bonus end of 2003 that gives you some discount if you go to the cobbler or the tailor to repair your clothes or footwear.
Okay. And I think we have some numbers or some data that you want to share about who pays the fees and who gets the results from those fees.
So we only fund it through the fees that brands and retailers pay. So that's what we call eco contributions. And then you can see the split, how we split it. So the biggest part goes to the accredited contracted sorters. So any sorters that would sort French collected feedstock. Then we keep a part for eco-modulations. So that's basically discounts that brands and retailers can get if the products reply to certain criteria. So we've got 3 eco-modulations. One is on durability. So that means the product needs to pass some quality testing to be durable on both clothing and footwear. We've got one on labels, so if it contains, for example, organic fibers or the EU eco label, and we've got one on recycled content.
Okay.
But the criteria are very strict, and so far, since it was implemented in 2003, there was no brands that could actually claim it, because all the steps from collection, sorting, recycling up to the recycled yarn needs to happen within a radius of 1,500 kilometers from the collection point, which at the moment is not traceable.
Is it not traceable or is it not physically possible?
It's not traceable at the moment because there are no proper systems in place. Feasible, yes, and I'll talk about it a bit later, about what we support as actions to experiment and put recycled content into clothing and footwear, actually.
Okay, thank you. Now, this is super interesting because it relates to things that were discussed earlier on today about somebody from Rehubs was here talking about building some regional hubs for collection and sorting. Yeah. And also, I think the fact that the biggest part of the subsidies or the fees goes as subsidies to sorters and recyclers is also part of the discussion that we were having today, where it was a question about how do we support the invisible actors of that whole supply chain, because we always think of recyclers as everybody that does the textile to textile recycling. But if you don't have the feedstock, and the feedstock comes from the collection and the sorting, it's really important that that fee goes to those organizations. Thank you. So we're talking about EPRs. We've mentioned DPP already. These are not the only laws and regulations that brands have to comply with. There's also transparency, there's traceability. All of this is EU-based. Because we're in the EU, we're talking about this. It is happening in other places geographically, but in the EU specifically, the EU is now the driver for regulation in the world, and that is a good thing because it's making the brands change. And for some brands, and we've spoken about this with Jennifer earlier, brands like Sympatex, it's part of your way of operating. It's your DNA. You want to do, you want to be sustainable. You want to be transparent. Can you tell us how this works at Sympatex? How do you keep track of all this, and what does it mean for you?
Yes, you just said we as Sympatex have the sustainability, even I don't really like to use that word, in our DNA. So we don't, I mean, we have to be compliant as everyone else, but we want to be compliant. So we believe this is part of what we do. Every decision we make, that we need to be transparent, because this is the only way we can really push this very needed systemic change, and also get this mindset shift that we really have to do something, and we have to be open about what we do. People need to know, when we talk about collectors or recyclers, they need to know what they're dealing with, what products they're dealing with, what components they're dealing with. So we believe we don't see this as a burden. We just see this as a natural thing to do. To keep track, it's not necessarily easier for us to follow all these regulations, because we believe in what we do and we just do it naturally doesn't mean we do it right, or we do it in a way that regulations wants us to do it. So it's also a struggle for us to make the right decisions and to know what's happening, to know what's coming in our way. And if we talk about the DPP, for example, we're really looking forward to it, but no one really knows which data points we have to collect, where they're coming from, how do we have to collect them, how we have to give them forward. And even though we understand the necessity of it, it doesn't mean it's easy for us. But I think it is easier for us because we believe in it. So me personally, and also within the company, obviously I try to keep up with what's going on out there, with the regulations, with the frameworks that are coming. But as they're changing constantly, it's obviously not easy. But then again, that's why our partner Retrace, for example, is coming into the picture, because we can't do it alone. We need someone helping us out to follow these regulations, to understand how we need to collect the data, how we clean up our data. And I think that's how we're trying to tackle the problem.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making the introduction and the continuation to me opening to Carla. Can you tell us a bit more about how you can help these brands that don't have this sustainable DNA, or the small brands that don't have the staff that can take their time to look at those, and how you would support them?
Yeah, no matter if we're working with a Patagonia or a Columbia Sports, who are also our clients, or if we're working with, a smaller brand, it doesn't matter. Everyone has to deal with the same requirements. So at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And this is also why I valued in the beginning that we are partners. We are, at the end of the day, a system, but we're tackling this together. And when you work with us, you're not alone. We always value our community. We're hosting workshops where we talk about all of this, where we giving regulatory updates, where we sit all together, invite the community, all our member brands, to just discuss these topics. How can we solve this? What are the best practices? And how does Retrace help and support? But coming back to your question, so in the long term, it's never, when we talk about DPP, for example, it is very important first to also think about your infrastructure and your data points, because what I hear very much lately is, especially for DPP, where does the data come from? So right now it's really important to very individually, for every brand it's different, of course, because there's a different landscape of PLM or ERP systems, or maybe you have an LCA provider. So it's very important to understand, where am I standing as a brand? Where does my data sit? And how can this all in the future integrate with each other? How can data integrate to Retrace to get away from that manual pain, but have it a bit more have a natural flow in your data? So for us, we always recommend to start first mapping out your data structure and your landscape. And then, of course, in the long term, Retrace supports with traceability, with supply chain due diligence. And of course, when it comes to the DPP, we can also enable brands to communicate externally with a QR code or in the web shop for the ESPR. So of course, we are also waiting for the final requirement as everyone. But we have many brands which are already preparing, because it's so important to start early and to stress test, because these processes we're talking about, it's nothing which sits alone in sustainability. It's nothing Jennifer's doing alone at Sympatex. It's something you need to do within the whole company. You need IT, you need sourcing, you need production, you need all the teams involved to manage this project, because it is not a standalone project. So when you are alone in the sustainability department, I get it. It's too much. You cannot do it alone. You need the others. So it's super important to also do this kind of work internally, and to have some sort of change management in like your internal workflows, but also collaborate within your company. And then of course retail helps. So it's not easy, and it's a work in progress. And again, no matter if we're talking about DPP or other requirements, it's a moving target. So now we're talking about ESPR. In the US, it's the UFLPA and traceability, but at the end of the day, we need the data no matter for what purpose. If it's then the ESPR and the DPP for external communication, that's great, but at least it's so important to start somewhere, because you will need that data anyways. If we're talking about UFLPA, you need it for the UFLPA. If we're talking about DPP, then you can showcase that traceability data in the DPP. So it's super important to just start earlier with the work, and then again getting stakeholders involved, changing your data processes. So there are many steps.
Yeah, I think I remember two expressions or words that you used when we had a discussion beforehand. One of them is, this is a holistic approach. You have to look at all these regulations together, because if you look at one of them at a time, you can spend a lot of time on each one, and then you have to move to the next one, and you realize that some data could carry over, but some isn't. And there are so many of them that you have to look at them as a whole. And
yeah, because it can be so confusing if you just focus on one regulation, and then you're getting frustrated because, I don't know, because at the end of the day, it is not easy, and it is quite painful, and sometimes you get lost on the way. But so if you zoom out and look at the overall picture, what the fashion industry is facing, I think it all goes hand in hand, and it is a holistic approach that if you start at some point with collecting your data about your supply chain and go into due diligence, at the end you can use it for your own internal processes to understand better where does your product come from, but also for the regulation which you might have to comply to.
Yeah, and the other point you made is, it's not a one and done. It's something that's always evolving, and even your data needs to be updated for each season or any change in the supply chain. So it's really something that is always ongoing, and I think that's an important point as well. Yeah. Moving on, and more a question to the three of you. It's how do you keep up with this regulatory framework, and especially for MSMEs that don't have a budget or a full-time dedicated staff? What's a good way to do that? Is there a good way to do that?
I think everyone in this room probably knows about that, and it's extremely annoying, and it's extremely stressful, and because it's going back and forth, and especially in smaller companies, but I think also in bigger companies, they have probably more resources and more people, but still you try to push something forward, and then you get to your colleagues and partners and start to involve other departments, and then you're like, oh, sorry, no, we can't move forward now, we have to go backwards. And then obviously it's super frustrating, and some oops sorry, confuses me a little bit. But I think what is
Sorry about that.
No worries. But I think what helps me, and I think what helps most of us, especially in the sustainability bubble, is that we're not alone in this. So we're all sitting in the same boat, and everyone is facing the same problems and is facing the same issues. And what really helps me is that there are a lot of multi-stakeholder initiatives, that there's huge peer groups. I'm in a lot of discussion and working groups, and that really helps me big time. And I also think that helps everyone in the companies and in whichever department you are, because it's not just you, it's not you fighting against Goliath, it's all of us, and we can really push back. So really sitting together on a table, discussing these problems and trying to figure out a solution and do that together. I mean, we still live in a democracy, and this is hard work, but it's great work. And I mean, we can really push back, and we don't have to accept whatever is coming our way. And so for example, we are working with the Policy Hub, and there's lots of people from the industry in there, but it's huge and so many other possibilities to sit down, tackle your problems, find solutions, talk to each other, help each other out. And what I really realized, that especially within our sustainability bubble, we see each other as colleagues, not as competitors. So we are a peer group, and whenever I have a problem, there's always someone in a different company who can help me out. And also with Retrace, they offer lots of great workshops, and there are colleagues from other companies. We sit together, we discuss these problems, and so there's a silver lining. And I think this is something we really have to, we have to stick together, and then we can survive.
It's interesting because Andreas Donner from Re&Up was here this morning, and he was talking about how the legislators are interested in this industry voice. So I really want to repeat this and encourage people to share their voice, to join these groups, and to give their experience to the legislators that don't know how we recycle and how we make textiles. And so more from a systems platform point of view, Carla, what is your approach to this?
I agree. I mean, we are also part of many working groups, and the Policy Hub, as you just mentioned, whether it's in Europe or in the US. Last year, I was also very much involved into working groups in the US. Well, we are part of these groups. And I think that's super important that we're all sitting in a table together and discussing these pain points and discussing the upcoming regulations. But also, I mean, when you think about how we develop our tool, because it's a constant development, every cent we're earning, we're investing into our tool and our platform to make it better. We are working very close with our clients because, for example, Marco Polo, as Oliver, they always give us feedback. What can you do better? What do we need? What's coming next? And they're challenging us as well, which is great because this is why we're so much focused on that industry and why we are the best on what we're doing, because we're working so close with our clients that is actually really helping them and enabling them and not just another burden. So I think it's a combination. When you ask our product managers or our founders, how do you build the platform? Yeah, it's a combination of course, the regulation, what's coming, our ESG expert who is also influencing us, and of course, our clients. Yeah. And again, you just mentioned, if any of our clients wants, for example, sometimes I get a request, hey, can I talk to, I don't know, Patagonia? I know they're always busy. We're like, yeah, of course. Like I asked them because it's great that you want to exchange, and then we just connect our clients with each other and let them talk about best practices. I don't need to be in that room, but I just give them the room to exchange. And I think that's also great that you really have this community.
Yeah, I think the community and collaboration in the sustainability field or world is a great thing, and it's an acknowledgement that none of us can solve this problem together. And I think, Cecile, when you look at this, you also have, you speak to members of your organization and suggest that they join some of these groups.
Yeah, that was a really good point about the smaller brands. So, all the SMEs, they usually have no clue. They don't have the time nor the resources to look into what regulation is coming next. So we usually encourage them to first join, the national federations, because they can group quite a lot of SMEs in a member state of the EU. And then at the European level, we also encourage them to join, for example, Euratex, that encompasses all the textile industry in Europe, and they're based in Brussels, so they perfectly know what regulation is coming, and they're really good at explaining it. And you mentioned Rehubs before. So Rehubs is also coming from Euratex at the start, but focusing on textile-to-textile recycling. So they're really up to date as well on regulation, and they are pushing, they're even driving textile-to-textile recycling, and asking all SMEs as well their feedback, for example, on the upcoming EPR regulation. At the moment, there's a contribution that is actually open on the EPR draft until the end of March. So you can find this online. I think I put the link somewhere on a slide.
I think it's on the next slide, and it's recorded, so anybody that wants to see it can find it. And I think at the level of the PRO, there's something interesting as well happening in terms of collaboration. I believe you spoke about a voluntary collaboration platform for PROs at the European level. And since you've existed, you as an organization, for so long, hopefully that's a way for you to share your experience, the things that works, the things that didn't work. Can you tell us more about that implementation or that organization?
Yes, so that's there's an organization called the Textile PRO Forum, and it's actually they're based in Brussels for EU, but PROs are implemented in each member state of the EU. So eventually the EPR system will be adapted to the situation in the member states. For instance, here in Germany, the collection rate for post-consumer clothing and footwear is already quite high. So they want EPR, but to push something else, like textile-to-textile recycling, for instance. In France, EPR was set up because the collection rate was very, very low. So that was basically the start. Now we are pushing more on textile-to-textile recycling, but as well as eco-design for recyclability. And each PRO will function differently. So brands and retailers, they were like, come on, we don't want to have different rates and different objectives in each member state. So you guys in Europe, you need to talk to each other. So it's actually harmonized for all brands selling products in Europe.
It is actually harmonized, because I was looking at it recently, and the ones that I saw come in, the fee structure was the same, but the reporting requirements are a little bit different. And
how PRO, how EPR will be managed is actually different for each PRO, and you can have several PROs in one country on the same waste stream. So basically, they will differentiate themselves in fees and how it's calculated, and then how it's spread to different actors in the value chain.
Okay, so it's still relatively complex.
Yes, it is complex.
Okay, but it's complex, but it's a good thing, because there's support coming out of it, and we were talking about it with on another panel this morning. This is something that can help brands, or push brands, to integrate recycled content, to make a product that lasts longer, or to have some kind of certification showing that the product is better. So there's some plus and minus coming from that.
Yes, and what I didn't mention is also you can work with other waste stream PROs, in one country. For example, we work quite a lot with the house PRO, because you've got textiles, on furniture, curtains, and so on. So you can actually collaborate with other waste stream PROs to expand the recycling applications, for instance.
Okay, that's great. And collaboration is the word that keeps coming back. Carla, you mentioned that you actually connect your customers so they can work together or answer questions. Jennifer, you said that too. There's always somebody in another brand or organization that you can reach out to. And I think this is really, it's a great way to work. We are competitors, but there are some things that we can't solve on our own. And it's also a picture of this industry that is really starting to work together, and it has changed. But this is something that's special, and that I want to stress. This collaboration is really, really important, and it will help us solve these problems, hopefully. Hopefully. We've mentioned legislation generally and EPR focusing, but what about DPP? DPP, so Digital Product Passport. Currently, it's an EU system only, but I think, Carla, you mentioned it's happening in other countries.
Jennifer actually mentioned that she heard it's happening in Vietnam. Where we don't know. I would say that trend is definitely there. I mean, in the EU, of course, it's very present, but I also see a lot of our US and Canadian brands preparing for it because, of course, they're selling in the EU. So it's becoming more and more of a trend. And there's, for example, one client, Moose Knuckles. They do like premium luxury outerwear in Canada. It's like a Montclair, I would say. And they are working with us and our partner RPEC on the DPP and on communicating already externally, even though they don't have to do it, but they just simply want to do it. And they're combining our platform, which is quite smart, and all that traceability data about their supply chain, but they're combining that with authentication. So when you think about DPP, you can also think a little bit outside of the box. And for example, for marketing purposes, it's great because these more like higher end luxury brands, of course, brand reputation and reputational risk is a big thing, and it's really important. So they, for example, combine authentication with our partner RPEC on the DPP. So basically they have an RFID tag in their products or on their jacket, and then you as a consumer can just go ahead and put your phone on top and scan the jacket and actually see, I have I have my journey of the supply chain, I have the traceability data, but I actually also have this, I have proof that my jacket is real. So I think it's becoming a trend overall in the industry, and I think also it is very easy to understand, because when you think about regulation, for the end consumer, I guess some of them, they don't really understand what that means. And DPP is something really easy to follow and understand. So even if I have nothing to do with fashion or sustainability and I go into the store and see I can scan a QR code, I get that. Like, everyone knows what a QR code is. So I think it's great to see that it's not just here in Europe, that it's also in the US quite present, and that brands there are also preparing for it. So it doesn't mean that it becomes regulation there, but maybe in the future, who knows? It's something they also would pick up, but I don't know for sure. So I can just guess.
Yeah. So the spread, if these practices do spread, it's probably going to be more because global brands are selling into the EU, and they're just doing that for all of their products, because you can't separate the production from one geographical area to another.
Yeah, I mean, when they're selling their products in the EU, they have to, they would have to have a DPP on it. I mean, the part which sells in the EU at least, and then, I mean, why not doing it for the whole production or for all the products?
I don't think it's extremely difficult today to separate your production, because generally it's X factories, and then it just ships to one place or another. So tracking whether a product is going to go to one geography or another is probably more difficult than applying the DPP or any other label traceability system to that single product.
Yeah.
But we're talking about this, and there's something behind all this, and it's the data. Where is there a solution for a standard solution for brands to have that data? If somebody is working with Retraced, do you help them to store that data, or does one need a separate data repository? Like, oh, my data is in my PLM, and Retraced or the Retraced platform can go and get it.
Yeah, it depends. So from compliance perspective, in the future, you would have to have that connection to the EU registry, right? So you need a digital twin, which the EU can also access to read out the data if what you're doing actually is right. So Retraced can host the data for several years and can be that connection to the EU registry. We as a solution, of course, will apply as all of the others. No one is yet there. So if anyone tells you, oh, we already have a connection, no, that's not true. We're not that far yet. So as a solution, we will apply to become an official host. So for now, lots of our clients already have their source of truth in Retraced, so they already store the data in Retraced. But in the future, when we're talking about compliance, Retraced will be a data host. But it doesn't mean that we're the only one. I don't know yet. I mean, probably there are other systems out there which also offer these services that you can host, or they can host your data. It really depends, again, on your setup, how you want to communicate, how, when you're looking at the DPP, what your data structure looks like. Are you also working with another provider, a care label provider? There's so many out there. So when you talk about the data hosting, either you work with Retrace and we then work with an integration to another partner to ship that data to another solution, then they would be the data host, or you use Retrace as your final source of truth, and then we host the data. So there are different scenarios, and it's very individual. Well, there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Thank you. I think that's pretty clear, but it's worth saying. And Cécile, we've been talking about DPP a lot. Is there, in the future or even right now, any link between DPP and EPRs, or is it still something that's completely separate and will remain separate?
Obviously, well, no, I think it's different. So DPP is a requirement for any product, just to have some information on the product. So I think the whole question now is what data you're gonna put on it. So probably the compulsory one about material content. Until then, we have some technologies, that can sort by material type once clothing and footwear enters sorting centers. But it's so easier if you have already all the data embedded somewhere on the garment. I don't know if DPP will be only linked to the product, so with the information stored online. Some brands are already, testing like RFID tags. We actually funded a project for Decathlon, and they used like these small tags that they can actually embed in the fabric.
Okay.
So they tested that for 100 washes, because it needs to withstand the life of the clothing. And it was much easier at the end for the sorting center to actually retrieve the material composition of the garment, which is crucial, the first point for recycling, really. But it would be great that the DPP can also host some other data, like what type of dye stuff, the fabric has been dyed with, what are the trims made of, which is an information that you can never find anywhere. So obviously EPR can help in pushing this, because we are representing brands and retailers at the end of the day, but I think it's two different topics.
Yeah, two different topics, but complementary, because if you have a DPP, EPR and recycling, claiming your fees or your subsidies will be made easier.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it would be good because at the moment we don't get material composition, for example, of products when brands declare it. To my great despair, but anyway. So with DPP, that could be, you would have this traceability made possible. Obviously, the data needs to be correct.
Right. Maybe to add here, because you were talking about RFID tag, that's exactly the example I mentioned before with that jacket. So this is already, it's like some brands are already doing that and testing it, as you said. And you can use that tag on the product and then combine it with different data. So it's not just, if you think about it, you cannot just do what has to be on it. You can also do more on that tag. So like, again, marketing purposes, like where can I go? Where can I find the next store? Where can I return my product? I don't know. It's just, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Where should I put my products at the end of its life?
Right. And if you're curious to see that in life, actually, I think we do have such a jacket here on not on our booth, but on RPEC's booth on Decographic in that other hall. So if you want to come by anyone and just scan that jacket, go ahead. It's quite interesting.
Great, thank you. I think that's a great place to finish, unless there's anything else you want to add. Where can people find you? Sympatex, Jennifer, online?
Yes. God, booth number, I can't recall.
Maybe C1
We
or
are in
C2?
C2
Okay.
for sure, and maybe someone in the audience can tell me the booth number. But Q17, thank you.
There you go.
So please come by and have a chat. It's me today and a few of my colleagues here. And yeah, thank you for having us. It was really interesting.
Thank you. Carla, where can we find you and Retraced?
In this hall, B4, if I'm not mistaken. So it's at the Tech Hub. And also, I think in 1 hour, I will be speaking again at 4:15 at the Tech Hub. So if you're interested to learn about our latest development, Tracing AI,
Which is great.
I'll show a video. It's our latest development we launched last week. So yeah, I will show how that works.
And Cecile, I know you just flew in specially for us today.
Yes,
Thank you.
It's only me from Refashion, and I came only, for talking about this session. What I didn't talk about is basically EPR is also, it can help brands and retailers we drive textile to textile recycling through the R&D that we can fund through the eco contributions. So we do a lot of pilots with brands and retailers, exactly like Accelerating Circularity does. You can find them in the other hall, C2 as well. But what I wanted to mention is that that fees also helps brands to get the eco-modulation then on the putting back recycled content. And the data is so important because I mentioned at the moment it's not traceable for brands in France to claim the eco-modulation on recycled material content into their products because of traceability issues. But that's why we fund these pilots, we keep the data, and then we can come back to the government and say, maybe you need to expand the geographical area, and allow textile to textile recycling to be feasible in Europe or wider.
Yeah, thank you. And we really flew over the subject of the eco-modulation and the fees, but looking at them, at least for the French one, if a brand has durability and an additional label, I think there's Ecotex Made in Green, there's the EU Eco label, you can actually get a very relevant eco-modulation kickback that's higher than the actual fee that's paid.
Correct.
So it's an encouragement for the brands to move towards using more recycled, producing a more durable product and testing that and documenting that, because the cost is covered by this and you will actually have a lower total cost when you take into account production plus the fee plus the eco-modulation. So it's very interesting to see how this works and how it can support the whole system. Yeah, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, let me get, microphone's coming. Thank you, Elena.
Yeah. Great panel. Thank you so much to the four of you. Cécile, I'm really, well, I can really relate to what you're talking about. I used to work for Decathlon as their artistic director for a few years, so I know all the RFID and everything. But now we run a creative consultancy in sustainability out of London, and we work with many different clients all over the world. And it seems to be that when we speak to our American clients, they're very happy to say, oh, DPP what? You know, and I'm like going, guys, you know, we see your flagship stores in Paris, in London, everywhere. Are these large brands being made aware that the DPP is mandatory and that it's not just for European-based manufacturers and brands? Like, is that something that's going to be sort of brought forward?
I hope so.
So do I.
Me too.
Because, I mean, we know that, you know, Europe as at large, right? I do include the UK in Europe, by the way, is really keen on doing the right thing. I mean, everybody's still awaiting what the DPP really has to embed, right? But we are so keen to get it right. And if we're the only sort of regional or geographical area that is that way versed or at least with that intent, then we're only tackling a very small aspect of the problem, because we know that our pollution comes from elsewhere as well, right?
May I react on that? And we're going back to what we were saying about separating production. When you're a global brand, you produce 100,000 units. You don't produce 50,000 with 15% recycled to send them to the EU and 50,000 for the rest of the world because of the cost, because of the complexity. So by default, the fact that the EU is doing that and that global brands have to comply is hopefully pushing these global brands to use 15% recycled anyway and not change it. And I think that's where the value of the EU as a rule maker is very important and very valuable.
I fully agree. All right, I think
No? Any other questions? Oh. I think you have to keep it really close. Or maybe we'll get a fresh one. We're just getting a fresh one.
It does.
I actually have two questions, but I think they're going to be quick. One to Cécile. PROs. How would PROs make sure that whatever clothes are collected are not exported to third countries and end up washed up on beaches? And to Carla, if imagining that DPPs are a thing, so there would have to be services that store the data, and every service that is accredited by the EU or whatever would be equally capable of doing that. How wouldn't companies become redundant in that sense? Like Retraced wouldn't be necessary anymore because there's lots of other services that do the same thing, storing DPP data and disclosing it, whatever.
So maybe I can start with the EPR. So at the moment, all clothes that are being collected in a country, everything. Well, for now, almost everything gets exported. That's the reality of the world. How it doesn't end up on the beach, that's another part of a story. Basically, you need to know how the sorting facilities are working, how the sorting centers are working. We basically audit the sorting facilities that are contracted with Refashion, just to make sure that the numbers they declare, because it's all based on declarations for now, all the numbers they declare are correct. But the reality is for reuse, you've got very little reuse locally, and that's basically an objective fixed for us to increase the local reuse. But there's so much that you can sell in second-hand shops, and then people just don't want to buy it. So you cannot put everything, in your garden. So it does get exported. It's about the professionality of the sorting facilities that ensures it doesn't end up on the beach. For recycling, it's exactly the same currently. There's about 50% that gets recycled in Europe. The rest gets exported. For reuse, it goes mostly to Africa. And for recycling, it goes mostly to Asia, namely India and Pakistan. And that's the big recycling hubs of the planet for everyone, every country in Europe or in the US. That's how it is now. What we're trying to push, especially for textile to textile recycling, is to have the value chains completely in Europe. So we've done many experiments on preparing post-consumer feedstock for recyclers. And I can tell you it's a challenge because the specifications can be quite high. And when you start from a mountain of clothing where people used to go and try and find the label to find, what material it is. But now it is feasible. It costs a lot, but it is feasible. And the other end of the story is like, how can you put it back into products? And again, we try to push and fund initiatives in Europe. But the reality is that supply chains are global as well now. So there's different ways of doing, but in France, the French government pushes us to reduce the geographical scope, surely.
Thank you.
And there are sorters that are more advanced than others. Some sorters want to keep exporting. Some others, they want to find some local solutions. And they are very active.
Thank you. Carla?
So if I understand your question right, why would brands use us if there are other solutions out there who are hosting data, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not a secret that we're not the only ones out there. There's so many.
But they're the best.
They are, of course, competitors. That's no secret at all. But DPP is only a small, I would say, feature Retrace is covering. If you ask our brands, I would say as of today, maybe 20% of our brands are already communicating with us. I mean, it's still not defined yet what brands need to communicate. Of course, that we have clients which are already doing that with us, but the other ones, like for example, Sympatex, use us for many different other purposes. We have so many features on our platform, so it goes more into detail. So when we're talking about supply chain due diligence, we're enabling brands to work with their suppliers together on the platform. So DPPs are part of it, but overall we offer many more services. So yeah, that makes us, I would say, survive. I don't know. It sounds stupid.
Resilient.
Jenny, do we want to add something as a happy user?
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily need the DPP. Obviously, we might need it because we have two different business models, but we are an ingredient brand, so we don't need the DPP, but we need to be prepared for it. So that's why we're also talking very closely with Retrace about it. But as Carla said, we use it for many, many other reasons. And so, I think it's not only the DPP, but there's so much coming our way, and we all need our data to be sorted. We all need to be straightforward with this, because it's not only the DPP or other regulation, it's also a business enabler, because there's so much, we will be so much more efficient, we save resources, we can really push our revenue if we save time and resources by clearing our data. And this is something we have to do in-house, but partners as retailers, they really help us big time to do that. And I think if you're not coming from the sustainability space, then change the narrative. Don't look at it from a sustainability point of view. Look at it from a business point of view. And we all have to do it. And why not use a partner who's better in it than we are? We want to make laminates. That's what we're doing. I don't want to talk about data. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a great place to finish. Thank you so much for your time and input today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.